At this point, we have implemented the functionality of end-user authorizing in order to interact with our contract. And there is a few requirements that you will need to take care of in order to work properly with the steps we have to go through in this and the upcoming lessons. So first, we're going to work with testnet. So please make sure that you've deployed your contract in the previous chapter to the testnet. Second, make sure that you've deployed your contract with a proper initial data. So namely, counter value, recent sender, which doesn't matter much, but important is owner address. This must be your active testnet wallet address because you're going to perform withdrawal operations. And as you remember, the logic of our contract will deny any attempts to withdraw funds that are going to be made by non-owners. And the last one, make sure you've got testnet coins. You can easily get them in the testnet giver. A link is also attached to the materials of this lesson. As I mentioned before, at this point, I expect you to know the address of your contract on the testnet. So this is my address, the one that has initial data with my testnet wallet as owner. So I will be able to withdraw funds from it. So as you remember, we already done some interactions with our contract while writing tests. We had to create a wrapper file that was helping us to actually send internal messages to our contract, run getter methods, and a little surprise, we can still use the same wrapper file, so we don't have to reinvent this logic. So let's create a folder with name contracts, and let's simply copy the wrapper file that we had here. Let's copy it into the contracts. And we also will better to have it in SRC folder. Great. So the contract wrapper file is located at the main contract now. And now we have a proper wrapper for contract, but how do we actually establish connection with the on-chain contract from browser? In chapter 3, we actually were detecting whether the contract is deployed or not. And we used an instance of Ton client from Ton library. And it was using Ton access RPC provider to retrieve information from chain and send a request to contracts, for example. We are going to use very same logic in this lesson. So before we start, let's do a very React thing. It doesn't have to do anything with Ton, it's a React thing. We will need to create a hook that is going to help us with initializing async objects that will be provided by Ton client. So let's create another folder called hooks, and we will store all our React hooks here, custom React hooks. We'll create a new file that will be called use async initialize. You don't have to know everything that happens here, but it is made just to make sure that once we will initialize the async object, we can use it as a hook. And one more hook we are going to create is going to be called use Ton client. And the contents of this one will actually depend on the previous hook. So we are going to import the Ton access, we are going to import the Ton client, and also the hook that we just created in the previous file. So basically what it does, it is providing us with functionality of using the Ton client with a certain RPC node provided by Ton access, and we can use it also as a React hook. This is going to be very useful once we keep coding our front-end application. So, and another hook we'll create is already very much related with our contract, and this hook is going to actually interact with our contract that is already deployed to the testnet. So let me create a hook called use main contract, TS. And I'm going to show you now what kind of imports we will need there. So we will need some React things. We will import main contract. We'll use Ton client. also this use async initialize, and we're going to have some classes from ToneCore. So now we would need to create a functionality of this hook, and it would look something like this. So basically, we call it use main contract. We use the hook that we just created a few steps ago, use Tone client. So here we have a client. And then we create a variable, or actually object, with parameters that we will actually need to get from the contract. As you remember, our contract storage has counter value, recent sender, and owner address. Yeah. So main contract actually is a result of this use async initialize. So again, we have a asynchronous function here, and we want to initialize this main contract with address. So basically here, we have to put the address of our real testnet contract. So let me replace it here. Actually, it's the same, yeah. And now we will return an open contract. So open contract, this is a type provided by ToneCore. So we have this main contract open now, and we have use effect hook that is listening for main contract. And once it's getting initialized, we will execute some more logic. So we are going to get value with the get data. As you remember, we created this get data method on the wrapper by ourselves. So it is going to return us the current value, the recent sender, the owner address. So what we're going to do, we get this data here, and we put them into the variable, the object with parameters that we actually initialized here. So we do counter value, recent sender, owner address, and then we execute it because it's asynchronous. And the result of this hook, we actually return contract address. So we can get this by having this open contract to actually retrieve its address. So we will be sure that we are on the same address. Then we will return the whole object of this parameters that we get from the contract. And maybe there's one more thing that we actually want to retrieve here, would be the balance of the contract. Because as you remember, we have a get method on the contract that is returning the balance of it. So we will say balance, set balance. We'll use the use state hook, and it will be 0 by default. So once we get this value, we'll say const balance, and we will also save it into the set balance. Yeah, I can even do it like this, and this way we will just retrieve the balance. So we will also return it as a contract balance. Great. So this hook is now going to provide us with important data about our contract from inside our contract. So one more thing we want to do now is actually use this hook. So let's first import it. Use main contract. And here's how we can use hook like this. So basically, we just get all the values from use main contract. We don't need to actually provide any address here because our hook is going to do everything for us, including the logic of connecting to the actual blockchain. So now we will do a few more steps in the layout. So what we want to do is we want to show the data that are received, and we want to show it in a way that Tone Connect button would be there. As you can understand, we didn't need the Tone Connect authorization to actually read from blockchain because it's open data. But we're going to keep it here for the next steps, for the next lessons. And here we say our contract address is following, and then we have this contract balance. So we do contract balance, and then this is just classes. We're going to later on style it, and here we have the counter value. So once it's loading, we can actually wait for it. So what exactly we have now? if we head to the browser, just save the file, and the browser is still running, it catches the updates, so I would just need to refresh the page. So once I'm in the browser, what I can see now is that the contract balance is 0, the counter value is 0, and all we need to do is we move to the next step, and the next step we're going to actually implement more logic with use of our wrapper to actually send the deposit transaction, send increment transaction, withdraw money. So next lesson is going to be quite interesting. I hope to see you soon.